Hey, Chip.
Hey David, how are you?
I'm good, man.
You're in the cold country. You're in Park City, right?
There's snow outside here. I have there are moose up there.
Wow. We have
Amazing.
whales here. I'm down in Baja, and I'm surrounded by I think what they call alebrijes. How many of you saw the movie Coco? Um, so this is here's a guide to asking good questions. Let's make sure we take that down. Phyllis, there we go. Um, so I'm surrounded. I'm in bed. This is literally the headboard of my bed.
No.
And one of the challenges with social distancing and shelter in place is it's hard to get out of bed.
Really?
But,
Wow.
well, not that hard. Not that hard for me. But so, what are you doing in Park City?
Um, I I sort of ran away from home. It was it just I had an opportunity. I got my best friend lives here, and he's like, we can hook you up with a very reasonably place to hang out because the ski resorts are all closed. So social distancing is a non-problem. I see one human in the distance, like every day or so. I see a lot of ducks and squirrels, and I'm looking forward to seeing the moose soon, I'm hearing.
And you're normally in LA.
I'm normally in downtown Los Angeles, a very different environment. Yeah.
And why get out of, I mean, so many people are getting out of urban places. Why did you decide to get out of an urban place?
I mean, I grew up in an environment not that different from this, so it's not entirely foreign to me. But
you mean you're a hick? I never thought of David as a hick. Really?
There are 100 people in my graduating high school class.
Wow.
Yeah,
Where?
it was the central school for the county.
Where was this?
Western New York, south of Rochester, east of Buffalo.
Oh yes.
Big snow, right?
Big snow.
Major hick.
Yeah. Wow. And then did you end up going to New York City?
Yeah, kind of roundabout. I went to the big town of Boston for college, and then I went to New York for a while, and then I lived in Paris for a while. I came back to New York, and then I've been in California about 10 years. But like you, travel a lot. Why are you in Baja?
This is where I live most of the time. First of all, let's just say a quick welcome to everybody on this call. Thank you for joining us for a noble experiment. And I was asked by David to try out this happy hour thing, and I have my Baja Brewing. It's a Scorpion Negro, and so it's a black scorpion, almost like a Guinness kind of Mexican beer, and it's actually pretty good. I'm gonna have a sip.
Should we do a toast for all of our guests?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a toast.
Welcome everybody. It's so great to have you all. It's really wonderful.
Happy hour.
Cheers.
Happy hour.
Woo.
Cheers.
So the reason I'm in Baja is I grew up in Southern California in Long Beach. I went to Long Beach Poly High School, which is a famous high school. It's where Snoop Dogg and both Cameron Diaz and Snoop Dogg went there. So it's a very interesting inner city school, #1 school in the US as a feeder school to the NBA and NFL. They called me Curious White Boy there. And I loved it. It was a very inner city school, gave me the opportunity to go to college up Northern California, stayed in Northern California for almost 40 years, and then moved down here to Baja a couple years ago, 3 years ago. And I spend most of my time here, a little bit of time in Austin, Texas, a little bit of time in San Francisco. So we should go back to muting everybody.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. And there we go.
So I think a lot of people know who you are, but maybe I should just say a couple of words about you.
Sure.
You're here. So, my recollection, probably going to get the bio wrong, so you can correct me on this. But you founded Joie de Vivre, the hotel chain, when you were quite young, right? Mid-20s, I think?
26, exactly.
Amazing. And then did that for a while, and then you went on to Airbnb to help Brian Chesky, to mentor him, and were the global head of hospitality and strategy there. And then that led you to You wrote a couple of books in there, best-selling books. I don't know when you had time to do that. We got to discuss that.
I wake up, I think in past life, I was either a farmer or a monk because I tend to wake up about 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And that's when I write.
Wow.
My writer wakes up before my editor.
That's better, right? You can't
Yeah.
have it both at the same time.
Well, listen, yeah, exactly. That you just sort of have to let it flow, and it, if it's crap, then you figure it out later. But like,
Yeah.
you gotta get. There's a famous William Blake's a famous writer, and he says there's certain places in the world where you just take dictation, and so Baja is one of those places for me where I wake up early in the morning, I meditate, and then I go to my laptop and I just take dictation because I'm getting some weird download from wherever. And my job is just to capture it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's how all the best work is done. So you went from the Airbnb experience with Brian Chesky, you understood this modern elder concept and wrote that book and founded the Modern Elder Academy. What was that? The book came out 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Book came out about 1.5 years ago, and we started the beta version of the Modern Elder Academy January 2018, and then opened to the public in November 2018. So we've been open to the public for about 1.5 years. And of course, you and I, let's talk about this damn word elder. First of all, for all of us on the call here together, and that's like, we have almost 300 people on the call right now. What the hell do we call ourselves? We're living longer, power is moving younger, the world is changing faster. Those three variables have us a little bit confused. And there's not really a word to describe the person who is in midlife, and maybe even the latter part of midlife, but they are still on it. They're still full of purpose, still, as we see in Ageist, which is a visual feast every week. They still visually look good. They generally think well. They're emotionally to a place in their life where they're actually coming into their full capability, because our emotional intelligence actually grows as we age. And so in some ways we're in the prime of our life, but the way we describe midlife, okay, everybody all at once, if you were to actually say midlife and then a second word, what word comes up, even if we don't hear you?
Crisis.
Yes. So the brand of midlife is pretty rotten. And so the premise we had here at the Modern Elder Academy was, and someone who's elder is different than elderly. Elderly is the last 5 or 10 years of your life, and you're often in a period where you need some support, and you need societal support, family support, etc. To be an elder is a relative term. It just speaks to the idea that at Airbnb, I'm 59 now, and when I joined Airbnb, I was 52, and I was twice the age of the average employee there. And one of the co-founders said to me in a meeting, "Chip, you are our modern elder." And I'll be honest, when he said it, oh wow.
Wow.
Let's turn that off. Well, relative to the people on that line, I am certainly an elder, because those were some very young people. So what I said when one of the co-founders of Airbnb said, "Chip, you're our modern elder," I said, "Fuck you, I'm not a modern elder. I don't want to be a modern elder. That sounds like an awful thing." But I hadn't really thought of elder being a relative term. And if at that time I was 52, surrounded by people 26. So I guess I was. And so we created the Academy because I think more and more people in midlife need to actually look at how do they shift their mindset around aging. There's a woman named Becca Levy from Yale, and I'll shut up in a moment, but get me on my geek thing and I'll get going. Becca Levy is a professor from Yale, and what she was able to show, and it was very, very well vetted as a research project, she was able to show that when people actually shift from a neutral or a negative perspective on aging to a positive one, they actually add 7.5 years to their life. And these are 7.5 good years to their life because of the fact that they are actually having a good experience with their life, which is actually more life added to someone's life, more longevity, than quitting smoking in midlife or taking up exercising. So your mindset and your perspective on aging has an enormous effect, not just on your happiness, but also on how long you live. And so we're the first midlife wisdom school in the world, and with the intent of helping people to own the fact that they are an elder, generally older than the people who surround them often, but also that they have an enormous contribution to offer and that they're moving into the best years of their life, just like your conference, which is called
Your Best Life.
Which is what a lot of people think. A lot of people think in this age that like their best years are behind them, when in fact their best years may be ahead of them. I'll talk about the U curve of happiness in a moment, but let's go back to you. How did you start Ageist? How did you start this beautiful online magazine?
I don't plan anything, Chip. I'm not like a planner. I'm an investigator. I'm just curious, right? So I didn't plan to become a photographer. I didn't plan to like start Ageist. It was just like an investigation. I thought, wow, this is like really weird. Why is it, all the communications designed for people like me assume that there's something terribly wrong with me, like immediately critically wrong with me, that it needs fixing. And I didn't feel that way. Nobody I knew felt that way. So I thought, well, let's investigate what that was about. And we did. We started a little humble newsletter like 5 years ago. I think there were like 50 people on it. And my grand plan, Chip, was that these 50 friends that we sent it to would continue to be our friends after we sent them this thing. Mm. So that was it. Like, there's no world domination plan. It was just that. And so we just continue to investigate and look. And, the language thing is one of the first things we did was we actually have an Excel spreadsheet at Ageist with words that are never to be used, like never to be uttered, can never be used. So like gold and silver, like all that, it's just like, oh, blah, right? Need to be reinvented. So with us, you won't ever see me use the word boomer. I very rarely use the word millennial. I mean, once in a while, but because I found that all of these things were just really loaded and problematic and not terribly useful. So like you and I had a lot of talk about the word elder. And I thought, dude, man, that's a heavy lift. You want to rebrand the word elder. Yeah, and but you've done it. We don't, I went so far as I hired a linguist because I just couldn't, I thought I need something outside of the human experience to name this thing. So I hired a bot, which I spit out all these words and they were mostly nonsense and I gave up. So now I just don't use a word. I just say our people. Done.
So, but what the name Ageist? Yeah. Almost speaks to the idea that someone is, if you're a racist, yeah, or if you're an ageist. So does it? My friend Ashton Applewhite, she's like, she's a radical activist against ageism. She says, "Yo, is this ageist?" She says that as sort of like a thing. But why would you say ageist? It's like creating a website saying racist and everybody's.
Well, okay. So if you're interested in biology, what's your name? You're a biologist, right? If you're interested in clothing, you're a sartorialist, right? Beautiful. That's fine, right? If you're interested in ethics, you're an ethicist. Right. So now we're a little punk rock. So we kind of flip it, okay? We wanted a word that would be unforgettable, right? Yeah. And so now, in the first couple of years, people gave us a lot of grief about it. They don't anymore. They look at the site and they like get it right away. But we just thought like, let's go right at what the issue is here. Sure. And we're gonna talk about that.
Here, one of the things, by the way, for those who are with us, just know that we're going to actually open it up for questions in a few minutes. And so you're going to have an opportunity to weigh in. I want to sort of like go on this theme of happiness and happy hour. And it was something I was going to mention a few minutes ago, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk too. There's this a series of studies that have been done around the U curve of happiness. And we have a lot of MEA alums on the line now that they know I talk about this when they come to our program. We've had about 800 people from 24 countries come here to Baja to our week-long program at the Modern Elder Academy. So what the U-curve of happiness has shown is the following, and this is so at odds with the societal narrative on aging. And it's the following, is that from about age 22 to 25 till about age 45, there is a long, slow decline in people's level of life satisfaction, or what we might call happiness. And then around 45 to 50 or 52, depending upon which country you're in, you scrape the bottom. Now, you don't have to scrape it for 5 to 7 years, but on average, there's this low point in this U-curve of happiness that's around 45 to 52. If that's your age right now, your mileage may vary, so don't take it personally. Your life could be quite different than that. But on average, the low point of happiness in people's lives is between 45 and 50 or 52. And then starting in people's 50s, people are happier than their 40s. They are happier in their 60s and their 50s, happier in their 70s and their 60s, and women are happier in their 80s and their 70s. Men just kvetch at that point, assuming they're still alive. So what's so fascinating about this is the societal narrative on aging we have really speaks to the idea that somehow it's one long, slow decline. You hit your midlife crisis, you somehow get to the other side of that, and all you have is disease and decrepitude and then death. But in fact, the U-curve of happiness, which has been studied across all cultures, says something quite different. How old are you, David?
I'm 61.
And I'm 59. So I'm knocking on the door of your 60s. How are your 50s compared to your 40s?
They were just different. I mean, we one of our finance clients. Whoa, that was awesome. I love Zoom. So we did this huge data study for one of our finance clients who wanted, essentially for us to quantify those U curves. And there's a lot of studies, and yeah, it's all true. There's a huge amount of data on that. For myself, it was, what I found was the career that I had excelled in, that I was like really well known in, was just kind of like sand between my hands. It was just like, wasn't there anymore. So I had to invent something new. And I had to learn all this kind of stuff. And so for me, it was like now I feel pretty happy. I think what I feel is as a photographer, I would do covers of magazines and, a lot of big advertising campaigns, but I didn't really have impact and influence in the world. Like I wasn't really part of the conversation. And now I am. So like now I have a lot of impact and influence in the world, and it fills me with a lot of purpose. Like I know I got a huge global community of people out there, and they're counting on me to like do the right thing, to like get up, get that newsletter out, communicate, do the right thing, show up. And so it's that sense of purpose that I feel quite strongly today that I don't think I felt before.
Teacher, can I show my homework assignment? Because it has purpose.
The Venn diagram, please.
So yeah, here's a Venn diagram. Now, for those of you who are MEA alums online, you've never seen this before. This is not in your workbook. I just came up with this, and I drew it yesterday, and then I just drew it like 10 minutes before we got online. So here it is. Can you guys see it? Can you see it, David?
You got a little higher.
A little higher. Okay, a little higher. Perfect. Okay. So what's been proven is that as we move into midlife and later, there are 3 elements that are particularly important for people: purpose, wellness, and community. And we've worked quite closely with the Stanford Distinguished Careers Institute, Stanford DCI, which is a year-long program. Only 30 people go into it. It's very expensive, and it's really good as a way of helping take people in midlife and later, generally average age is about 55 or 60, and help to embed them in the Stanford University campus. These are their 3 pillars, and they really sort of represent the 3 pillars of the Modern Elder Academy. If you look at this for a moment and you look at purpose, purpose is right here. So purpose is something you were just talking about. So David, you're saying you have more purpose. But if you take purpose and community, or actually let's actually start over here. Purpose and community, the intersection, the juxtaposition of these 2 is generativity. Now that may sound like a word that you've never heard of before, but there's a guy named Erik Erikson. And Erik Erikson, developmental psychologist, said that the most important thing, hi again, the most important thing for people in midlife, as what he called the 7th stage of life, is the juxtaposition of generativity versus stagnation. Stagnation is when you actually are just bored with life and you're not taking a growth mindset. You're not trying new things. And you're so self-absorbed that your tendency is just to focus on yourself. Generativity, on the other hand, is all about legacy. It's about giving back. It's about giving to the future generations. So when someone is actually at this purpose and community intersection, they're in that state of generativity. And when you feel generativity, you feel alive. Okay, now what about community and wellness? Since purpose, wellness, and community are the 3 pillars of what it means to live a good life in midlife and beyond. So community and wellness is the juxtaposition here is social wellness. So what the hell is social wellness? Well, when we think of wellness, most of us, if I sat down with everybody on the call right now and I said, does wellness mean to you? Almost all of us will talk about our own personal wellness and health. We don't talk about social wellness, which is one of the things that's really important in this era that we're in right now with social distancing. Social wellness, if you take the word illness and you get rid of the I and add a we, you get wellness. So illness may be when we're self-absorbed into ourself. Wellness may be when we're living in the we. And when you live in the we, you move from social illness to social wellness. And social wellness is part of what we need in midlife and beyond, because it helps solve for the loneliness that a lot of people feel as they get older, when parents pass away, when they get divorced, their spouse passes away. There's all kinds of reasons that people actually later in life can start feeling lonely. So social wellness is this connection of community and wellness. And then up here at the top, when you have wellness and purpose, you have flourishing. To be in a place where you have combined a sense of purpose in your life, which means your mental, spiritual sense of living your best life, and wellness, which may be your sense of personal wellness, you're in a state where you feel like you're flourishing. What Modern Elder Academy tries to do is we try to be right in the center there, in the center of the Venn diagram, where purpose, wellness, and community come together, and generativity, social wellness, and flourishing come together. And that is Professor Conley's lesson for the day about what's important in life at this stage, is the idea of how do we take purpose, wellness, and community. And one of the reasons why retirement is an idea that is being retired right now, beyond the fact that people have to work longer because they're going to live longer, let's just talk about the necessity factor. It's because a lot of evidence and research shows that when people retire, they lose a sense of purpose. They lose a sense of community, because a lot of their community was their work community. And often they lose a sense of wellness, because actually they lose some of their sense of discipline. Yes, for sometimes some people in retirement go off and golf every day and stay healthy by walking 18 holes. But a lot of people in retirement actually do the opposite. And one of the things that's quite fascinating is that the average person loses 2 years of life by retiring, which is not what retirement was originally made for. It was meant to actually sustain you and make you feel better. But that was in the industrial era when people were doing backbreaking work. Okay, I'm off my soapbox again. I'm sorry. But I wanted to show you my homework. That was my homework for the day.
Oh, gold star, Professor Chit.
Yeah.
I look at that and I just think like, this idea of focusing on the self is just they're just boring, right? They're just bores. So, I say like, be interested and be interesting. That's like, we are familiar with that idea of, the fastest way to die is to retire.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't imagine that sort of thing. How do we...
When are you going to retire? Will you ever retire?
Why would I do that?
Okay.
It's insane.
Okay.
Like retire means to pull back. I don't want to pull back. I want to go forward as far as I can, as fast as I can, to meet as many people, to do as many things. I don't want to pull back. That, like, I don't know, people ask me that, and it's like, I'm not wired that way. I don't know. But what I want to talk about here a little bit is this idea of connectedness, because I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to do a happy hour, was because I feel like we're physically disconnected, right? We have to be. It's COVID. We can't be around people. So how do we do that? How do we keep staying engaged? Like, I almost, I was talking to my wife this morning, and there's something we spend, the Zooms are great. The video conferencing is great. All the social is great. But I'm even like, I don't know about you, Chip, but I'm loving phone calls. Just like a regular phone call while I'm making dinner, like, right? Like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? I mean, what's your thinking on like disconnectedness?
I think there's so many ways to connect, and it's not just even with people. Being in Baja, I'm in a very remote part of Baja. Just going for a walk in nature, because I won't see anybody, and just noticing. We've had a little bit of rain here lately, which is really unusual this time of year, and just a tiny bit of rain in the desert means everything comes alive. And to just sort of like observe a flower or a hummingbird for 10 minutes, you can feel that sense of connectedness with nature. One of the things I've been trying to do is as a ritual or practice, let's call it, is to write a personal letter to someone once a day. Because in the normal life that we live, at least I'll speak for myself, in my normal life, I don't have time to write a handwritten 15-minute letter to someone. Now, albeit here in Baja, it's not easy to send, but I am doing them, and I am sending them, because the act of writing a letter to someone is another form of connection.
It's
The fact that I actually even write it, when I'm writing it to them, I feel them, and when they receive it, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't get personal letters anymore like that. So some of it is is going back to the old school retro approach to how people communicated and connected when there was a Wells Fargo Express.
I love the whole, I love the idea of the letter, by the way. I'm up here in a place where I can't get newspapers, and I really love anything physical. I just crave, like, enough of the digital, right? We love digital, but it's like, give me something I can touch. I want another sensory input.
There's URLs and IRLs, and URLs are obviously web, and IRLs are in real life. And one of my past lives, in between my era of selling Joie de Vivre, my boutique hotel company, and going to work with Airbnb 7 years ago, I created a website called Fest 300, and it was a website dedicated to the 300 best festivals in the world. And what I was feeling then, and I feel it now even more so, is the more digital we get, the more ritual we need. And the ritual, and in real life with ritual, it's a personal ritual where let's mute that. It's an opportunity to allow our mirror neurons, which are in our brain, to actually dance together. And if you've here's our experience with the Modern Elder Academy. 800 people, all have come down here, average cohort size is, 16 to 20 people. When you connect with people in real life, you can and you have some level of their soul and who they are as a person, you can actually have a pretty engaged Zoom or video call with them, Skype, whatever the form is, FaceTime, etc. But when it's actually the first time interactions with people and you've never really sort of gotten their pulse or never danced your mirror neurons with them, it's harder. It's a lot harder. So I would say, yes, we are doing this. And most of the people on this call, David, you and I have probably never met. So it's really easy to be judgmental about David or me, or, because we don't really understand the pulse of that person. But when you get that sense of like the pulse of a person, you really can get in person, and you can get to a place where like, okay, you can reconnect with that person. And that's why I think handwritten notes are a way of doing that as well. It doesn't have to just be digital. It can actually be something that feels like a thoughtful gesture. And a thoughtful gesture can be as simple as, if you want to use yeah, text or a WhatsApp. It could be just a simple note. Hey, good morning. I just want you to know that I'm grateful that you're in my life. And I was just thinking about that time 5 years ago. Uh, ooh, that's Liza. That may be Liza. You might just come on, and that may be yours. You can mute yourself. That'd be great. Is that you? That's I don't know. Maybe you're on the screen. So.
Chip, do we want to take, do you want Laura to come in with some questions from our?
Yes, please, 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 please. Let's do questions.
Yeah.
So if anyone on the chat on the bottom of your screen want to send a question out to David and Chip, we were thinking about asking how you're doing right now. Some of us maybe are living alone. Some of us maybe are living at home with a full house and trying to work. So if you wouldn't mind, could you please drop questions in the chat and we'll go through them. In the meanwhile, we have a question from the audience. Maybe you can answer, Chip, what should we be calling 50 to 70-year-olds?
Sexy and on it. I don't know. I think I have a friend, and she calls us perennials, not millennials, but perennials, which means sort of the flower that's constantly blooming year round. I'm starting to get to a place. I've gone through a very much of an evolution on this. I think you should just call yourself whatever you feel like you should be called. I think labels sometimes are actually distracting and problematic, just like I think David thinks the same. I think the best thing I would just say there is to just say it's not about your age in life, it's your stage in life. And the stage in life really speaks to the idea of whether you're in a stage where you're still growing. I know some people, friends of mine, have been really taking on a term late bloomer. I'm a late bloomer. And I sort of get that. I actually sort of like that. I think late bloomer is an interesting idea because it sort of says that you're still growing later in life. And so, but I don't, there's been a lot of work done by both me, by David, and a whole bunch of other people. And no one has yet come up with the term that that does it. I will say that I want to introduce a term here that a lot of people don't know about. That for many people don't know that adolescence as a word is only 116 years old. It was created in 1904, and after that word was founded or coined, we came up as a society with the point of view which is like, oh, you're not an adult when you hit puberty, because prior to that point, before 1904. You got married when you were 14. You still worked in the mines. You had a baby at age 15 and maybe had 2 babies by the time you're 18. Adolescence became this new idea that said your teen years are a preparatory period for adulthood, from childhood to adulthood. And so there's a new word that's been coined by my friend Ken Deitwald, who is, I think, on this call, as well as Barbara Waxman and others, but it hasn't gotten a lot of mainstream appeal. And we're trying to actually bring it to sort of the pop culture. And it's not adolescence, it's middlescence. So just like adolescence is full of hormonal and emotional changes, middlescence is full of hormonal and emotional changes too. So what's interesting about middlescence, it is that similar transitory period where you're moving from adulthood to elderhood, not elderly, but elderhood. And I actually think if I had one word to try to describe this era of life, it would be to help popularize the idea of middlescence. I like modern elder too, but I think modern elder really works in the workplace more than anywhere, where you are a 52-year-old offering wisdom to people in their 30s. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that if you're 55 years old today, there's a 70% chance your boss is younger than you. And by the year 2025, the majority of Americans will actually have a boss younger than them. So we better get used to the idea of having 5 generations in the workplace and figuring out how intergenerational collaboration works in a new way, whatever we call ourselves.
Thank you. So David, we have a question for you. With Ageist, in terms of content, what engages the 50+ audience most in terms of connectedness and keeping that community connected?
Oh my God. Why don't I get the hard questions? It's, that's a complicated question. So I can tell you what kind of content people will click on more, which is not the same thing as what builds community. That's a different thing. Like if I want to like blow up my traffic, I tell people I would do like, topless firemen holding cats or something, right? Like that's not the same thing. Building community is reflecting an aspirational view of where people are at, and saying like, this is possible. Let us show you how to do this. It's a way of, so that's why like the visual with what we do is like super important, because everybody's like, well, what does it look like? Well, it looks like this. It looks like me, it looks like Chip. And I think that, with building, it's difficult. I think you build community by showing commonality and showing value and saying like, hey, and value in the sense of like, you're important, like the label thing. I have an allergy to, I'm a punk rock. I'm just like, I have an allergy to that. And I feel like it's like, I tell people just like own it. Like, I don't care how old I am. It's like, to me, it's like immaterial. It doesn't matter to me. Charlotte, who might be on the call here, Charlotte was my boss. I was like 55, she was like 24. Like, whatever, we got along great. So I think that like showing people that, their age counts. Like, I'm not one of those people that says like 60 is new 40. I'm sorry, 60 is 60. Like it's like, I'm not gonna discount 20 years of my life, it counts. But I think that, like owning who you are and saying like, I have value here. And you do, and all of you have value too. And I think that's, for us, we try with that message.
I think, if I could add on to that, I mean, I think that what's vastly underestimated is what grows as we age. I mean, what we know is physically body. I mean, what's amazing about age is you create, David, a storyline of people who are still flourishing later in life, whether it's physically, and a lot of times it is physically. Sometimes I actually do feel a little embarrassed when I'm reading it. It's like, oh my God, these people are 10 years older than me and they are so much more fit. So I sometimes feel like, oh, this is not a club I'm supposed to be.
We can work on that, Chip. There's a solution to that.
I'll work on that. I know. But actually, but what actually I find interesting is the flourishing isn't just the physical side of people being able to flourish later in life. Here are 3 or 4 different data points. They're just, again, I'm a geek, so I go and study this stuff. Emotional intelligence on average grows with age, number 1. Number 2 is we're very clear that as we get older, we're not as good at recall or memory. I'm sorry, that's the same thing. Recall and memory, the same thing. We're not as good as memory and recall, or we're not as fast. But what we get better at as we age is what's called crystallized intelligence. And it's the ability to connect the dots. To be able to sort of say, like when I joined Airbnb, I didn't know a thing about tech. I was supposed to be the mentor to the founders. I realized after the first week, like, oh my God, I am like the intern as much as I am the mentor. I felt like Robert De Niro with Anne Hathaway. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be curious. I'm going to learn something. But about 2 months into it, Brian, the CEO who I was mentoring, but he was also my boss, and he was 21 years younger than me. He said to me, Chip, we hired you for your knowledge, but what we really appreciate is your wisdom. And I'd never thought of the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And he said, it's your ability to connect the dots. So I want you to be in charge of strategy for the company. I'm like, Brian, like, I've never been in a tech company before. You want me to become in charge of strategy for a tech company? He says, yeah, because strategy is about connecting the dots.
Right.
You're able to see holistically, systemically. It's almost like you can see the future. And what's interesting to me is if you look at the most famous futurists in the world, they're generally 50 years old and older. They're not 25. And so there's this element of one of the things that we build also as we get older, beyond EQ, beyond connecting the dots, is being able to anticipate the future. And here's a key other one, to be able to see collateral benefits and costs. A young brain is very focused, and that's really valuable in many different ways. But the thing that happens if you're too focused is you lose peripheral vision. And so an older brain and an older person being able to anticipate what we like to call the pattern recognition, wisdom is just another form of pattern recognition, you actually get better at being able to anticipate the future and what are some of the collateral costs and benefits of that focused decision you're making. So I don't know. What else do we have, Laura?
So it's 45 minutes. Happy hour is coming to a wrap. Yeah, it went by so quickly. There were a couple of people just asking questions around in this moment and time, you know, as this community of people that have come together who are super vibrant and typically happy and doing good in the world. This has been a stressful time. Any tips for kind of being the leader and overcoming some of those emotions? And then from there, we'll then wrap it up, and because I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
David, you want to go first?
Yeah, my suggestion is get to work. Just like get busy, get to work. I don't want to see any white space on your calendar. You need to be like busy. Get up in the morning, work out, do your stuff, get to work. Helping people engage, get out of your head, stop thinking about yourself and your circumstances, and what are you doing to contribute?
It's funny because here I am. You said get out of your head and maybe get out of your bed. And as for those who heard, I am literally in my bed. This is my headboard in my bed in Baja. So clearly, I'm not taking your advice, David. But for anybody who knows me knows that I don't have a lot of white space in my calendar. But what I would say is I'm going to give the opposite advice because I actually think that's really good advice, because one of the things that's really important is to have purpose and to have this sense Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, quite famous book. If you were to distill that famous book on meaning down to an equation, it would be despair equals suffering minus meaning. And what he really showed was that what's most important when you're really in a desperate place is to find the meaning, find the learning. What are you learning right now? How's it going to serve you in the future? So I would say, be busy, fill your calendar. Don't get into that place of lamenting, or future tripping about what could go wrong. But at the same time, take stock. You know, one of the beautiful things about this downturn, this, social distancing, is you may have some more space in your life. You may have some space to sort of say, I've been on the damn treadmill for the last 16 years, doing the same thing in the same industry, same company, and I didn't realize how much I didn't like it. And this is the opportunity for you to actually take stock. What I used to do when I started my company when I was 26 was I every weekend I would write in my wisdom book. My wisdom book was like, what did I learn this week? And what questions do I have? And I would just offer that to everybody listening right now, is like, maybe at the end of the week, on a Saturday or Sunday, what did I learn this week? And what questions do I have? And then when it comes to the questions, this is the important part. Don't feel like you are on your own. Don't feel like you have to solve them yourself. This is where the social connection piece is really essential. Connect with a friend, connect with a family member, connect with somebody who knows you well, connect with a therapist, connect with a coach, connect with someone who can give you some objectivity of your life. because one of the gifts of this downturn, and this, I keep calling it a downturn because of course I'm a business person and that's what I'm seeing. But one of the benefits of this health crisis, this pandemic, is the time and space to take stock. And I think that that's important for all of us.
Thank you.
So,
Do we want to talk about next? So we're meeting again in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
April 22nd.
April 22nd. And on April 22nd, my good friend Alex von Bitter is going to be joining us. And Alex ran a little restaurant called the Four Seasons in New York for about 40 years. You know, besides his very interesting stories, getting a table for Jackie O and that world, Alex is also a master yogi. And he does this really interesting thing for, I'm probably going to get the numbers wrong, but for about 10 years, he's been mentoring groups of men his age because he feels that men this age are sort of a special needs group. And I would have to agree with him. And I think Chip probably will too. The women are kicking butt, the men, whoa. So we're going to have Alex on, and I think he's going to be an awesome chat. I'm super cerebral guy, fascinating character.